Hi, everybody. I'm Lauren Finns, and I'm just going to be your introducer today. I'm on the Speaker Series Committee, and I'm very, very pleased to introduce to you Dr. Amy Mazur. Amy is a professor emeritus at Washington State University, and she is also, I have my cheat sheet, an affiliated researcher at LIEPP Sciences Pro Paris. And Amy received her bachelor's degree from Colby College and her master's and PhD in politics and French studies at NYU. That's my alma mater too.
Really? Oh, that's so cool. I love it.
So Amy is very well accomplished and has written several books. Let's see.
Oh, here it is.
Her most recent books are Gender Equality and Policy Implementation in the Corporate World, Making Democracy Work in Business, that's a mouthful, and Implementation When Policy Fails, the Uphill Battle for Equal Pay. So very much into gender studies and gender equality. Today, Amy is going to be talking about understanding transitions between democratic and autocratic regimes. So, Comparative Politics 101.
Yeah, excited.
Amy, thank you for being here today, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Well, first, welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I know this is a super busy time of year, so it's great to see everyone here. I'm really delighted to be here today for a variety of reasons. One is that I have a deep respect for the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters has been a part of the development of democracy in this country and has played a central role, and also has been a sign of healthy democracy, because every democracy needs to have a healthy civil society. So I would like to thank everyone who's participated in this local chapter, because you really play an extremely important role. And I'm really honored to have been invited to speak before you. Second, which is really fun, is I've taught undergraduate classes for 35 years, and this is what I taught, Poli-Sci 102. I taught a class about democracy, and it was within comparative politics, and comparative politics is one of 7 subfields of the discipline of political science, the way the subfields work in political science is they determine the curriculum at the undergraduate level, the PhD level, and also hiring. So I have a position in comparative politics at WSU, or I had before I retired. The most important thing about comparative politics is it's good to realize, to put this in context. It's not about saying what works the best. It's about, excuse me, it's about empirically analyzing all 95 countries of the world to figure out what are the patterns across the countries. Now, you all have a handout. If you don't have a handout, there should be enough. There are 30 of these. And you can see that there's 100 counting nation states. There's 195 or 93 countries of the world, depending on whether you count by members of the United Nations, or there's 193 members of the United Nations, and there's 2 other non-nation state countries that are often counted in these 195, which is Palestine and also the Holy See. So comparative politics is about patterns, but what is at the center of comparative politics is democracy. Because there's an assumption that democracy is good and helps people and makes people happy. So really the study of comparative politics is about the study of how do nation states become democracies. What is the process? So this is kind of my passion of teaching this class, because as you imagine, 35 years of teaching 18-year-olds every year, I get to teach them about what's going on outside of their country and what actually democracy is. Now, I don't actually study transitions from autocracy to democracies. But as my title of one of my most recent books indicates, really studying gender equality policy is about studying how to make democracies more democratic. But I'm not giving you a boring research lecture. You notice there's no PowerPoint, which is, if I was presenting my research, I would be giving you a PowerPoint. But no, I'm teaching. This is the class I've taught. I've taught for 35 years. And so what I did is I took excerpts of the whole course and tried to put it into something that might be useful for you. Because how did I come about? Why did I end up here? Is I came to Kylie Ritzman's talk, and we started talking about whether the United States is an autocracy, whether it's transitioning into an autocracy. And it's on everyone's minds. So I was asked to come here and kind of tell you what the experts say, what are the concepts, what are the definitions, so that you can maybe have a better toolbox to talk about what is going on in our country, which obviously is not the best. So here I am in front of you today. You have a handout. I'm going to walk through this handout. Also, now I understand, Lauren, that normally you have a presentation and then there's Q&A, but I'm going to teach this like a class. I use the Socratic method, I do interactive, I always take questions as we go, so I'm just going to take the full amount of time. So where are we at in terms of, so I'll just hopefully, ask a question anytime. Obviously you're not 18-year-olds, so you know how to ask questions without totally being off base. I have taught 18-year-olds my whole life, so I know how to do it.
You
But
have
anyway.
exactly the same amount of time you would have in a 15-minute class. So
Right,
it's perfect.
Right, exactly, right. All right, so here we go. All right, so I've just said how comparative politics is about the study of all the countries of the world, and actually the United States is just, we like to joke, the US is the N of 1, which means it's only 1 out of 193 countries. Does anyone know what N means? Sample. It's a sample of 1. So this whole obsession with the United States by there's a whole subfield of American politics called, subfield of political science called American politics, which is what Kylie works on. But we look at the whole world. But guess what? I'm teaching American US students, 18 years old. So what do you think my entree is? The United States, right? And also I have learned over the years that, what is surprising, this is a shocker, that really our students don't know much about our system, political system. Oh, what a shock. Yeah. So I love teaching this class because they learn so much. They learn that that actually in comparative politics we call the case of the United States is called American exceptionalism. Not because we're great, because we are so different from the rest of the world. The rest of the world, most democracies don't have presidential systems. They have parliamentary systems. They have proportional representation. They have socialist parties that are not treated like the devil. And my favorite one, when I really want to get at them, I'm like, did you know that you can go to school in you can go to college in almost any country of the world and pretty much pay a couple $100 every year? And they're like, what? Wow, So I start from the United States because they have to learn about the United States to understand the rest of the country. So I start with this question. As you can see, 32 years of teaching, I still have not perfected writing on the board. So I'm terrible at writing on the board, but it's not easy. So we have a question. We're going to start with a question, and we're going to end with this question, because that's what we do, and that's what I do in class. It's always great, because then people don't fall asleep as much. If we start with the question, if anyone falls asleep, I had to have my squirt gun. No, I'm just kidding. I don't do that. I do make comments about people falling asleep or coming in late, but I won't do that. Don't worry. Okay, so is the USA transitioning to an autocracy? That is our organizing question, right? So the idea is that we're going to start with this question, and then I'm going to give you all the tools, the concepts, the boring concepts, and And if you want, I could send you a test if you want, about what an autocracy is, what does transitioning mean, what are all these things, and then at the end, we're gonna come back to the question. But let's start. So how many people think we are and before we have any definitions, some of you probably, like, everyone comes, like, you're like people who have had amazing lives and careers and all different backgrounds, so you might all know a lot of this stuff. 18-year-olds don't necessarily. So this is, so how many people think we are transitioning, we are getting dangerously close to going to an autocracy? Wow. Okay, can I see that again? I'm a counter. I love counting, and politics is all about counting. It's all about counting. So we've got, I'm gonna do, keep your hands up please. So there's one person, 2 people, 3 people, 4 people who don't think we are. So we got 4 people who don't think we are, and everyone else thinks we are. Okay, so let's dive in. So being, being a class, we have to define our terms. Because the terms, as you might imagine, it's a little different than biology, because politics is everywhere. And so we hear all these terms all over the place. And the thing is, you're learning from comparative politics. What do these terms mean? So you want to, I'm just giving you the working definitions of various terms from comparative politics, so you know what we're talking about. So the first term is countries. Remember, I said countries of the world, right? We call them countries. We don't call them states or nations, because there is a concept called nation state. Nation state is it's also a synonym for country, but it means, if you look on the handout, it means that these countries, they're independent, right? These are independent countries. They have control over their borders, so it means they're nation states. They have a common national identity. They have a government. So the word state in comparative politics means government, the governing institutions at all the levels. Because also state means, what else does state mean? What else does the word state mean? Because it gets confusing, right?
Territory.
Yeah, it can be the United States of America. But also sometimes people refer to countries as states. So I have this cute thing. When is a nation state, not a state? When is a state? So when I say state, it means government. But not to be confused with, when we say government, what do you think of in the United States? The federal, pardon?
Federal government.
Yes, but that in comparative politics, that's just the United States. So the government means the institutions that hold the formal political power, also called the state. So it's just something to keep in mind. Let's see. Not to be confused with the government in power, which tends to be used in parliamentary systems, like the care of government. Like you might have heard, Jesus, I don't even know who the prime minister is right now in France. Has changed so many times. But in any case, it's often referred to as the government as well. All right, so what we're looking at is political development, transitioning from democracy to autocracy. And right here, this is, when we're thinking about it, it's not just black and white. This is what's called a continuum, and it's used a lot in comparative politics. So what does a continuum allow you to do? Or what do you see here? Is it black and white?
Shades of gray, in-betweens.
Yeah, they're in-betweens. And then also, you can have countries moving, going back, like this, all over the place. Right, and these are called, at the end, Max Weber developed this word. Anyone back from way back in their sociology classes? What are at the end? Anyone remember? Ideal types. They do not exist in reality. So it's a standard by which you compare. So we are looking at political development in terms of regime type. Regime type. And that's whether a country is moving towards a democracy or away from a democracy, and where is it located. But we also have a second kind of political development, which is also called nation-state building, right? And so that is whether a country becomes whether the country can stay together or it flies apart. So we have 193 stable nation states. But countries can fly apart. Can you think of any countries that are not doing so great in terms of being a unified country today? Haiti. Well, Haiti, is it falling apart or it's under siege? It's not separating out and not, yeah, because a nation state is whether it stays an independent country.
Okay, it's not about just not working.
It's not no, it's about the crises of nation state building, which I don't want to go into, but it's in your handout. Countries have to overcome these four crises of participation, legitimacy, national identity, penetration, in order to stay together. Now, if you look at the numbers in my handout, so you can see in the handout the crisis of nation state building. But then look at the top, counting nation states and democracies. So how many? 97 have, stability. So development, right? We want things to be stable and not change all the time, right? Whether it's the country falling apart or regimes changing. Only 97 countries really have stable nation states over the past 40 years. The 40-year mark is what we use in comparative politics. So if you look at distribution of power, vertical distribution of power, so HDP, VDP. So when you're thinking about a nation state, thinking about a country, you want to think about that, right? And so your governing system is about how it actually controls all of these things. So, all right. So, I forgot to put this up. Okay. Yeah. So you guys have it. All right. So I still haven't gotten there. What is the definition of democracy? And we don't use the term. We say democratic regime, and we don't. So there are also lots of ways of describing democracies. What are some ways of describing democracies?
People have choice.
Okay, but just like a title, like we call them just, because in comparative politics we just use the term democracy. But there are also adjectives that get added. Constitutional, liberal, democracy in the form of the republic. You can call it, but we use the term democracy in comparative politics because remember, we're about comparing the world. And we don't want to get weighed down by specific terms. But also, right now, we talk a lot about the republic in this country. A republic, right? Has anyone looked at the American Constitution lately? Does it have the word republic in it? No. What is republic? And why is everyone really into talking about republics right now? Like, republics, right? We get told, oh, you're not really a democracy because we're a republic. Like we don't want to talk about democracy because this is a republic. But a republic it came from Plato's republic, right? It's theory. And all it means, it has meant that it is a democracy without a constitutional monarch. But when is a republic not a democracy? What countries use the term republic in it? China, People's Republic. What other countries? Former Soviet Union, the Soviet republics. So republic doesn't mean it. It's not a good term. And furthermore, it's gotten so politicized in this country. I mean, who knows? Because obviously the Republicans were formerly on the left because they favored the republic. And also, my favorite country, the French. Republics, they call them republics. But we don't use that term. We say democracy, right? We say democracy in this country. So that's what we're looking at. Democracy versus autocracy. All right, so Andy, get to it. What is the definition? It's really simple. When you're a researcher, you seek simple definitions. They're called elegant, parsimonious. You want them simple and also and so you can't exclude countries. So you have the formula for democracy on your handout. It's from Smith. It's a book about European politics, and it's mechanisms of choice plus mechanisms of balance equals stable democracy. And what is the lifespan you want? What is our lifespan that we want to have stable? 4 years, yeah. So what do you just off the top of your head, what do you think those are? Mechanism of choice. Again, what might a mechanism of choice be?
Voting.
Okay. Other things? Other mechanisms of choice?
Impeaching.
No.
Referendums.
Referendums, right? Balance?
Amendments.
Amendments? Balance? Okay. Balance? Other mechanisms of balance? Yeah. Laws, rule of law, right? Rule of law. So you'll see, so we're gonna get to this table shortly. This is what I always do. I always throw all my things all over the place. And you're gonna see, when we look at the table, we're gonna go through the table, because we have our formula of democracy. You are gonna decide, as we go, whether each thing is a mechanism of choice or balance. So you can just take notes. Just say, no, that's choice, that's balance. Just like a way of tracking. But you have to have both. You have to have mechanisms of choice, and they have to be serious. They have to be followed through. So, pretty easy, right? Piece of cake. No problem. No. Right? We still haven't gotten there. Okay, so regime type. Since I am a French politics specialist, and I think that, France is the center of the world. No, I don't. France sometimes does. But France has had extreme regime development. They've had 5 republics, 3 empires. So I'm going to do, have you guys ever watched Shakespeare? The Cliff Notes, all of Shakespeare's works together? Yeah, so I'm going to do French political development. It's very interesting. 3 minutes. Ready? Okay, so over 400 years, 3 minutes. Does someone want to time me? Anyone want a chrono? Put the chrono on. Okay, so here we go. The Ancien regimes ended in 1789. It was all the old folks. There were the three states. Then we had the French Revolution, and people were kind of reasonable. They created the Assembly. French Revolution, 1789. But then they started cutting everyone's heads off, and it got really revolutionary, because revolution is about the change of the gods, not the guards. And then we moved into constitutional monarchy, the third regime. And then and so some wanted the constitutional monarchy, but they didn't. They wanted to cut everyone's heads off, right? So they cut all our aristocrats' heads off. So then we had the first republic, 1792 to 1804. Liberté, égalité, fraternité. That didn't work out so well, because then that fell. The regime fell. And then we had the first empire under Napoleon. Yes, we did find his member finally, after they tell us selling Napoleon's penis. It's been a very hot commodity. Then we had, that didn't last. That only lasted 10 years. Of course, there was a war involved. Bourbon Restoration, 1840, 1830. Oh, that sounds like a monarchy to me. Oh, absolute monarchy. Oh, but then we had a little variant called the July monarchy, which was more constitutional monarchy. Then we had, oh my gosh, the Second Republic, still in the 19th century. Okay, and a second Napoleon. Of course, it was his grandson, the man riding on the white horse. Then we had the Second Empire. Oh my gosh, kind of like Trump, created an empire in name only, lots of gold, I'm surprised Trump doesn't call it an empire after Louis Napoleon Bonaparte. Then we had a third republic, yay! But that only brings us up to 1940. Unfortunately, France was occupied, which is another regime controlled by, France was cut in half. And then we had, that was called the Vichy regime. Then we had the Fourth Republic. That was a mess because there were too many parties, parliamentary systems. Then they created the Fifth Republic in 1958, and now we are in the middle of the Fifth Republic. And guess what is happening with the Fifth Republic? I'm done, by the way. What do you think? Is anyone watching the news of France? It is falling apart. Talking about the Sixth Republic, and for years I've been writing about Fifth Republic. This is set. How many republics have we had in that same time period? How many governing regimes have we had? Just one! Under the same constitution. France has had 5 constitutions. Yay. All right, so does everyone kind of get the regime idea? That's what the regime is about. So when we're talking about autocracy and democracy transitioning, we're talking about regime change. We're talking about regime change. So, and so we're talking about democratization. So we're talking about when an autocracy system is moving towards democracy. And comparative politics people think democracy is a good thing. How many people think democracy is probably better than autocracy for all of us? Yeah, she's like a troublemaker. She's my neighbor, so I can say that. So it's kind of a good thing. We think it is. So really, there have been, and over the history, we really didn't hit. We had these independent nation states in the West up until World War II. What happened to nation state building after World War II? Because we had about 31 countries, nation states, 40 countries. But after World War II, there was an expansion of the number of countries. What caused that expansion?
End of colonialism.
Yes, the end of colonialism, right? So all of a sudden we have all these independent nation states. And do you think it's easier to achieve nation state independence through democracy or autocracy? Yeah, wow, you guys, yes. Yeah, because you can control people. Because if democracy is choice but balanced, what is autocracy then? We haven't said that. What is the definition of autocracy?
One or a few in power.
Yeah, a few in power. Go ahead, I'm sorry, what?
Power held exclusively by a few.
Right, there are no mechanisms of choice and balance. None. And they're held by the chief executive. Autocracy, right? So autocracy is kind of easy to study. Democracy, not so much, right? So we've had 3 waves of democracy after decolonization. We had the 1970s. Now, are these waves of democratization or lurching steps? Like kind of go forward. So in the 1970s, we had a bunch of countries that were autocratic and they moved, and this is the center line. So when you're talking about, when you're talking about moving to an autocracy, this is when we ask, is the USA moving toward, it means it's going over the center line. Moving over here. It doesn't mean it's ideal type, it means it's losing ground, right? So we had waves of democracy, right, in the 70s. Portugal, Southern Europe, Portugal, Greece, Spain, Latin America, and Southeast Asia, right? That was the 70s. 1980s to 1990s, what happened in the 1980s and the 1990s? What countries, what part of the world were going towards democracy?
Like South America, like Chile, and
No, that was in the 70s.
oh, that was it.
Yeah. What was happening in the 80s and 90s?
Africa?
No, big waves.
Soviet
Soviet Union, Central Eastern Europe, and also North Africa and you're right, sorry, Sub-Saharan Africa and North Africa, but really Eastern Europe, but also Sub-Saharan. So this was the 90s. So what happened in the 2010s? There was a wave. Where was that? 2010s, not that long ago.
Middle East.
North Africa. Yeah. It happened on the internet, right? And it was called the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring. So that's getting, see, aren't you guys thinking comparatively? Isn't this cool? You got away from the United States. We're thinking about the world. But you can also think more about what this concept means. So these are transitioning over here, right? And so, but what actually does that mean to transition? Okay. Let's see. Right. Autocratic. Okay. All right. So, okay. So anyway, sorry. Lots of backtracking though. And like I said, this continuum goes back and forth. All right. So let's start with autocracy. So we said non-democratic. And I'm into terms, and actually I wrote a whole book about defining concepts, conceptualization and defining and measuring them. So I'm kind of a methods wonk. It's a weird thing. So why do we say, what are some other words for autocracy that you might have heard?
Dictatorship.
Right, dictatorship. Other words that you hear a lot in the press.
Monarchy?
Monarchy, right? Authoritarian regimes. We don't use those terms. The general word is autocracy. They're non-democratic. But there are lots of different types of autocracies. Like authoritarian, Hannah Arendt started writing about totalitarian autocracies, which, does anyone know why we started using the word totalitarian autocracies? Does anyone know when that started?
Probably the Soviet communism, Soviet form of communism, which is in fact a form of autocracy.
Right, so that was under Stalin, right? So what was before Stalin? Hitler. Well, Stalin and then Hitler. Like the two were together, right? Hitler too. Hannah Arendt wrote about Hitler. But yes, we definitely use the word totalitarian. Total control. Like you have no say, repression, police, the government controls you. Authoritarian is autocracy light. Authoritarian is like, yeah, we'll let some people exist. We're not going to put you all in prison. Totalitarian is the dark side. It's dark. It is.
Benevolent?
What?
Can you have benevolent?
Authoritarian systems. For instance, women's rights, my area. You can have really great women's rights in an authoritarian system. Saddam Hussein, that was one of the things he did, was that he gave rights to women through policy, through outputs, through policy. And you can have, it's more open. Now, you talked about dictatorship. You talked about monarchy. Those are different types of one-person rule, right? A dictatorship, it can be military or civilian. It just means, so a dictatorship is a generic term for only having one person in power, and it means that they're not getting their power from a monarchical family, from their royal family, right? So we have absolute monarchies, which aren't totalitarian. This is all, but then we can also have, we can use dictatorships, but that's too specific. So we use the word autocracy. It's much more specific, and then you have different types. So what happens when countries go backwards? What happens when countries go backwards? They go backwards. Transitions to autocracy, right? So you can have a coup d'etat, which is a small leadership group takes control and takes away the power. You can have a revolution. You can have a social revolution. Any coup d'etats? Anyone know of coup d'etats? Have you seen any in your lifetimes?
What about Nepal?
Nepal?
Yeah.
Yes, they haven't. Yes, they didn't. That was a social revolutionary more. They didn't. So my political theory advisor or professor at NYU, coup d'etats are change of the guard, and social revolutions are change of the gods. When you have a complete changeover, but you also have suspension of the Constitution. Now we're getting into some stuff that really, you suspend the Constitution. You have to suspend the instruments of government. So you can either take power over them, you can completely change them, and it's a rewriting of everything. So in Ghana, in 1970s, Flight Lieutenant Jerry Rawlins was head of the military, and Ghana was independent, and he appeared on television. It's a film I showed all my students, and he said, "Hi, my name is Flight Lieutenant Jerry Rawlins, and I am now suspending the Constitution." And and he was on TV, right? So what did that mean, that he was on TV?
Must be true.
No, but he controlled the TV. He had to get into the TV station, right? He had to get into the TV station, right? And he goes, all political parties suspended. I am the pure leader. So he suspended the Constitution. He actually said suspending the Constitution. All right, so I already talked to you about horizontal and distribution. Horizontal, so executive, legislative, judiciary, and so this is horizontal distribution of power, vertical distribution of power. We are about to move in to the table, finally. So this is about policy-making power. It means it's controlling what the government's doing, but it's ultimately about policy, right? Like, so what are some policies that affect you?
Taxation.
Taxation. Other things that affect you.
Healthcare.
Pardon?
Healthcare.
Healthcare. So government, so when we talk about power, that it's about policy making power, and each different branch of government does a different thing. I'm not going to go into the details of it, because we're just talking about general different regime types. But what determines the distribution of policy-making power? So this is the federal, national level, executive, legislature, judiciary. This is the what determines it? What determines it?
The Constitution.
Yes, the Constitution! Bingo! Because now you can look at your table. The Constitution is the blueprint for government. The Constitution is the blueprint. Are you using this? Wait, I lost. I keep on losing my thing. Are you using that?
You can go.
I'm so sorry. I do this all the time. I lose my handouts. So the constitutions are the blueprint for government, and they are. There are two types. Yeah, you can have a big C constitution, which is a formal written So these are constitutions. Constitutions. But you can also have an unwritten. It doesn't have to be written. Do you know what country has an unwritten constitution that has one of the healthiest, longest living democracies in the world? Britain has no written document. It has 4 sources of the Constitution. So you don't have a constitution. Now, but these are our constitutions, right? So we already said suspense of the Constitution. So democratic constitutions are called normative constitutions. They actually, because when you have this, when you have an autocracy, you have the distribution of power is even between the 3 forms of government and top to bottom. So constitutions actually in democracies are normative, they're respected. People know about them. Do you guys know about the Constitution? Do you know what the articles of the Constitution? Do you know our Constitution? Anyone know what Article 1 is? Article 2?
Article 1 establishes the legislative branch.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Legislation comes first. Article 2?
Executive.
Yeah. Article 3? Judiciary. Article 4? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? You guys don't know what the Constitution is.
Actually,
Do we need to know about the Constitution to have it be normative? Does everyone? How many people think everyone needs to know about the Constitution? More people, but yeah, Susan, maybe not. Why not?
Well, no, I was saying we need to know it exists. We need to know sort of what's in it, but I don't think it's
The
necessary.
leaders need to know it exists. The leaders, because it's about controlling the leaders. It's about controlling and making them accountable to us, right? So maybe not that important. Well, we all know which. So what was the articles all about? What were the articles all about of the Constitution? No, I'm sorry, the amendments. Sorry, excuse me. What were the amendments all about?
People.
They're like the amendments. What were the first 10 amendments? Yeah, because whoops, they forgot about that. They forgot about. So civil rights are that's a part of this Constitution. It needs to be included. And then we all know when we got the right to vote, yeah, because the legal woman voters helped with that, right? So we've got constitutions, right? Normative. Autocratic constitutions are not respected. They are nominal. They become nominal, right? They're called nominal. They're just in name only. They're not actually being respected. There's no constitutionalism. Leaders are not following them. It's not really doing what they should do, right? But that's not what happened in Ghana. Nor did it happen in many of like the Soviet countries, because there's also what's called semantic, which just means the Constitution reflects the dominant system. So, under and like in the Soviet Union, you had a constitution with every new Secretary General of the Communist Party. So the Brezhnev Constitution, Article 118. Oh, that's a lot of articles. In fact, when you have a short constitution, people say short constitutions are better than long constitutions. This is the French, remember? Fifth Republic, soon to become the sixth. So we have semantic constitutions. Division of power. So the division of power is determined by the constitutions, but basically it's really easy. Divisions of power, you have to have a separation of powers, clear separation of powers. I'm sorry, what was your name? Yeah. Larry already said Article 1, Article 2, Article 3. That's where it's laid out, separation of powers, and checks and balances. How many people think checks and balances came from the United States? Does other people think that's checks and balances? What are checks and balances?
Having one control the other.
Right, like when the government, when Trump decides to go start having his best buddy Pete Hegseth, who we know really well, is Doug Wilson. Anyway, go and shoot people in the waters of Venezuela in the name of that there's war. Then it's like, well, no, you can't do that because it's against, you got to take it to the courts. So there's a way of balancing power. So balance of power, separation of powers, checks and balances. I just spent, you used to spend your whole comparative politics class on this. I just spent 2 minutes. So moving on, and in autocracies, you have no balance of power, right? It's all centered in the executive. And there's no vertical. It's all controlled by the executive. It's the chief executive, whoever that is. So that's an autocracy. There's no kickback. By the way, if you want to look at constitutions, I put a URL in there. You can if you're really into that, you can go look at other people's constitutions. So elections. And now you're supposed to be saying, are these mechanisms of balance or mechanisms of choice? Elections. So elections do a lot of things, right? Primaries, select candidates, vote for people in office, and you mentioned it, initiatives, policy initiatives. So why are they mechanisms of choice, balance? What are they in democracies? Choice, it gives you choice, right? So you need to have a choice, right? Right? And what do you need to have a democratic election? They have to be. How does it work? How does a democratic election work in a healthy democracy? Fair. Free. No violence, right? No coercion. Right. What do you think about this country on that score?
How does gerrymandering figure into all that?
What do you think?
I think
It's definitely, it's how they're administered.
anti-democratic
Why is that?
because somebody's trying to control the outcome.
Yeah, and who's controlling that? State legislatures? Well, who's controlling gerrymandering right now?
Whoever happens to be in power at the time.
Yeah, in this country, who's controlling
State
gerrymandering?
legislatures,
Right.
generally.
Yeah, generally, right?
At
So,
the request
why?
of
Go for it, what?
At the request of somebody.
Somebody, yeah, you can say it. I always talk about Trump in my classes. It's no problem because it's like a laboratory. I mean, we can talk about Trump because it's like this is gerrymandering. It comes from the president. It comes from the president. All right, so we've got the elections. Elections, they all have to work nonviolent. Now,
So gerrymandering is against balance.
exactly. Well, yeah. It's against balance, right? Because you're saying the rules of the game. Elections administration. My colleague Michael Ritter wrote a book on elections administration. Sounds really boring, right? But it's not. It's become so important. How the ballots are counted, how the districts are defined. It's the devil's in the details, right? Devil's in the details for democracies, right? So, it's really, really important. So, but autocracies, when you really know you're over here, right? This is all the great. When you really know you're over here, elections are political extravaganza. They're not about choice. They're not about balance. They're about control. They're about controlling people. So what are you, when you think about elections, there's one-party states. You had a one-party states in some sub-Saharan African countries. In the Soviet Union, you don't have any opposition. They're political extravaganza. Voter turnout. All right, let's just have that frank discussion. Voter turnout. That's 100. Is voter turnout really what is our vote? What do you guys think about voter turnout in this country?
It's terrible. It's so bad.
It's won the election because of the people who didn't vote, who couldn't bother to get out and vote.
Right. Right. So you think that we shouldn't be at 60%? I mean, we got to 60%. That's amazing. Except not when you compare other democracies that are at 75 and 80. But where do you have full democratic, when do you have full voter turnout? In autocracies, right? Russia right now, full-fledged autocracy. What kind of autocracy is Russia?
Competitive.
Competitive, yeah. Competitive. It's kind of like a dictatorship, civilian dictatorship. Yeah. So you got but you got high voter turnout. What happens to the opposition in autocracies?
They get killed.
Yeah, they get killed, right? They get put in prison, right? Remember the guy in Russia who got killed and then his wife took up and yeah. And so they get killed. They get put in prison. That's crisis of participation is squelched. So there's a clear difference, right? Gerrymandering, maybe not so bad as killing people and putting them in prison, right? So because we're looking at it from a comparative politics perspective across the globe. We're not looking at it from our belly buttons, right? So yeah, it's still not great, but we're not putting people in prison.
But could your
Or
agenda
are-
lead more toward authoritarianism?
Why would that be?
Because then specific groups can control the outcome of the elections, and then once they win and they're in power, they do whatever the blazes they want.
Because that leads us to political parties. Political parties, as most Americans, what is your view of political parties, being a U.S. citizen? How many people are U.S. citizens? Is everyone? Yeah. What do you think of political parties? When I say political party, what comes to your mind?
Ours are stable.
Stale. Other things that come to your mind?
Out of touch.
Ah, thank you. Out of touch.
Institutionalized.
Yeah.
Private organizations, not the government.
Yeah. Well, we have some crazy campaign financing laws that were passed in the 70s that really changed the horizon in the name of democracy. They allowed for these things called political action committees, and they told parties they couldn't have anything but soft funds. So you can't just blame the political parties. It was the policies that were passed. Also, we have what's called the constant campaign. In most democracies, you can only campaign for 20 days before the elections. Most democracies of the world. Also, you can only spend, in France, only 7,000 euros on your own campaign. Guess why Sarkozy is in prison? Because he spent a lot of his personal money on his campaign. So it's crazy. So you can't just blame political parties, because political parties, in terms of theories of democracy, are the linchpin. What you're all saying, they are supposed to be making government officials accountable to the electorate. They put people up into office, and if they don't do their job, they yank them. They don't get reelected. And so it's a notion, and I know people aren't going to like this, it's not capitalism, but Anthony Downs wrote about this, it's the electoral marketplace. Political parties have to compete over you. They have to compete for you, right? Because we're seeing what's happening. Why was this election in Tennessee like about the electoral marketplace? What happened with the did you follow this off year? So what happened in Tennessee?
The margin decreased significantly.
Voters were going WTF. Right?
I didn't hear what you said.
What?
I didn't hear what you said.
The voters were like WTF.
So what happened? I mean, I know that the Republican won.
They won, but Trump had won by 22%. They only won by 13%. But guess what they're talking about now? Think about, it's called the theory of responsible party. They're talking about affordability in Tennessee.
We're talking about.
Affordability. Remember Trump? Well, Trump's so confused. I mean, geez, come on, whatever. He's so confused. One day it's affordability, one's not affordability. This guy just, he's so out of control. Anyway, affordability is what Mandani got elected on, right? And so now they're talking about affordability. Why are the Republicans starting to, what else are the Republicans doing that are shifting? That's about this electoral marketplace. What else are Republicans, and what else are they doing?
Constantly blaming the Democrats for the
Right, but
negative things that have occurred.
right, but can they do that anymore? Are some Republicans? They are.
They're constantly talking about the Democrats.
Moving toward, away from the Epstein, from
Marjorie Taylor Greene. How many thought Marjorie Taylor Greene would have resigned? No one resigns from Congress.
Right.
Marjorie Taylor Greene resigned. Electoral marketplace. That's the electoral marketplace. That means the vote works, and they know they're not going to get reelected. And boy, do these people want to be reelected. Not always for great reasons. Not like Nancy Cheney. Oh my God, you were such an amazing mayor. Anyway, but we have another new generation of women mayor coming in. So yeah, political parties, civil society. Back to where we started. We're going to be finishing up. You guys, democracies have to have a healthy civil society. They have to have interest groups. They have to have social movements that are unfettered. And actually, that's where people get this country wrong a lot. They don't really get it. We have such an active civil society. You are an example, an empirical example. And who's driving a lot of these court cases? Is it like some elite Congress person?
Executive.
No, who's driving? Who's taking all the cases before court that are challenging Trump? Who's taking? Civil society.
Yeah.
We have such a powerful, League of Women Voters, do you guys have a legal division?
We have a legislative action.
Yeah, there you go. Now has a legal division. These are powerful players, and they are part of the mix. So you've got, and in autocracies, what happens to civil society?
It's not there.
Gets wiped out, gets put into prison, it's controlled. Performance, you don't want civil society. That's what happened in Nepal. Did anyone watch what happened in Nepal a couple weeks ago? The youngins, Gen Z, they just got fed up with all the corruption and they started burning stuff down. They were not included. So in any case, yeah. And then I added the fourth branch of government, and then we're gonna finish up. What is that, the fourth branch of government?
Media.
Yeah. So what do you need in a democracy?
Free press.
Press. Don't get put into prison. Don't be told, who gets to come on Air Force One and all these kind of things that were. Where do you guys think the free press situation is in this country?
Deteriorate.
Why?
Well, because the president is controlling who gets to attend briefings. I mean, the Defense Department is now filling it with pro-Trump media outlets.
Is there pushback on that?
Very little. I haven't seen much.
Well, why haven't the various media groups joined together to protect themselves?
The concept of fake news is overriding an awful lot of people changing their
Well,
mind.
now we're talking about social media, which I'm so happy I got off. I totally got off of all social media. Yes.
It seems to me that there are a lot more news outlets now than when I was growing up. You know, there was the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, but now you've got all, you know, BuzzFeed and all these others that are breaking news that maybe the mainstream isn't. And so I'm not sure that the press is dead.
Right. Okay, so you're giving an alternative, right? Yeah. It's a different form, maybe. And it's just because we're in a different communications era as
And
well.
a lot more investigative journalism, it seems to me.
Interesting. Oh, a little optimism here.
I have less optimism because
That's all right. We can do that.
I feel like there's no longer any fact checking because it doesn't do any good. Even if you know that he's lying or he's telling something, nobody cares anymore because the ones who believe him no matter what or don't care, and the ones who do care, they can't do anything about it.
It seems to me that our side is telling news without context. When that context shows up for people who read a different set of news, they look at what we say and say that's completely false. And so people are not seeing the same information and not believing the same truth. They're not believing the same things, even if those things in a free and fair kind of a news presentation would be something we would all agree with.
Well, and it's complicated and time consuming, and then there's this kind of vindictive nature of, you know, if you're a university, a research institution, generating some of this factual information, you're suddenly threatened with loss of your grant funding, for example.
And both sides are doing some of this anti-true information kind of stuff, because I think our side feels like, well, if we don't do that, then we're losing the game.
Yeah.
But then what it means is that you don't know if there's anybody you can trust.
Yeah, exactly. And Amy, one thing back in that marketplace thing,
Yes,
this
the marketplace, yeah.
this idea about changing the census counts, revising
Yes,
those
you
to
change the
then-
parameters of the marketplace.
Yes, and the political bias,
Which is related to gerrymandering.
yeah.
Yeah, you're actually changing who is counted, and that census is based on, I mean, it does determine who gets what in a lot of funding
And which are the
situations.
prevailing parties.
But, all right, so I'm gonna play devil's advocate again here.
Yeah.
These representatives in Congress wouldn't be resigning if they didn't think they were gonna lose. They're gonna lose because people are starting to recognize the reality, not what they're being told by the regime. They're starting to feel what's really true and experience what's really true, and they're starting to vote against that regime.
Yeah.
And so I think it's doubling back on
The
itself.
government, they're not a regime. Yeah,
Or
yeah, the administration.
It's starting to double back. The lies are starting to
Yeah.
double back.
I mean, and to go with that argument, our democracy is 250 years old. We haven't had any regime change ever, and we have this really healthy civil society. We've had a constitution up until now that has been and maybe now. I mean, okay? So we all have to go. It's time to go. But so
I have
where?
a question for you, since you're a professor of our young people. I
Yeah,
just
of our
read
young people,
something
yeah.
about the age group 18 to 24.
Yeah.
The percentage of support for Trump in that age group has been increasing, and I don't know why.
It's been among men. It's not among women. That's my understanding. I'm not a voting expert at all, but it is the younger men that have been shifting over.
But why?
Social media. They've got like Joe Rogan. Some people are really, really popular.
The manosphere.
Who present some of the
Romance, they love romance.
Yeah, the manosphere,
exactly.
right.
And they present some of the things that even you and I would say, oh yeah, that's a good point, without the other points that we know to be even more important.
Yeah, but that happened. That same macho kind of image of Trump, he won a lot of the Latin American, the Latino vote, but that's been completely wiped out by his immigration policies. So I mean, the other thing is, you could argue that we have an extremely healthy democracy.
No.
Because we have alternation. Oh, I forgot to talk about alternation. Didn't say that. You have to have the opposition has to have the ability to come into power and take power over government. And we've had alternation. We've had Trump presidency, Biden presidency, back to the Trump presidency. Now it's looking like the midterms are going to go back to the Democrats. That could be like an argument for, alternation is a major part of healthy political parties. It's a major part of the electoral marketplace, is that the opposition has the ability to take power over.
Like in Idaho?
But but Idaho is a single party state, right? Dominant party state. I think there's only 3 that are dominant. Well, although I think there's a lot of states that are dominant party systems where they have, a lot of states. But that's not the federal government, right?
Yeah.
But So, you get the last word, and then because people need to leave. So what do you think? Where do people are at? Yes.
I've got a question.
Yes, a question. Yes.
I'm curious what you think about the probability, or actually the loss of power of the fourth branch of media because of the advent of social media, in which the algorithms allow a very, very small number of people to control what the majority of the country is seeing. Because most of the country, people in this country below the age of 35 are using social media instead of newspapers.
So here's where I'm at. I'm a glasses half full person. I'm like you. And this is not just happening in the United States. This is happening everywhere, right? So we're not special. We have a particularly virulent variant of someone who wants to be not just autocrat. I mean, I'm surprised he hasn't started evoking Napoleon, because Napoleon created his own empire. Because an empire was he brought that back because it was the Roman Empire. But he was like, I can create. So it's almost like, why does Trump doesn't know enough about history to talk about the empire, actually? But I'm optimistic. My view is social media. Yep, that's a definite factor. It changes everything. But I think it also gives people access to things that they couldn't have access to before. And I believe ultimately our country doesn't like mean people. We have a civil society. We have a tradition of democracy, and a 250-year tradition of democracy. And I think that people are going to do the right thing, even with social media. But that's we need to end.
Yeah. Help me thank Amy.
Thank you.